Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and we are here to talk about another decision to show why the Supreme Court is the worst. This Supreme Court is the worst Supreme Court in the history of the U.S. Frankly, it couldn't even be Supreme Nacho Grande, because it makes some of the dumbest fucking decisions. Supreme Court says cities can punish people for sleeping in public places. You may go, that makes sense. Think about it. Who needs to sleep in a public place? The homeless. So when people are so poor they can't afford a home, I'm sorry, you can't sleep in public. We gotta jail your ass. We gotta fine your ass. Because you're poor. Because you're homeless. The Supreme Court rules on homelessness and what it all means. Last week, the Supreme Court issued its opinion in the case Grants Pass versus Johnson, which makes it easier for communities nationwide to fine, ticket, or arrest people living unsheltered, even when there is no adequate shelter available. So yeah, it says, yeah, you can punish the homeless for being homeless. And this is why I'm at the point, none of you fuckers are Christian. None of you fuckers believe in Jesus. Quit using that as your excuse because you don't believe in it. Fucking quit. You're hate mongers. Period. Because you wouldn't do this if you cared about your fellow human beings, but you don't. Specifically, the Supreme Court determined that the cruel and unusual punishment clause of the 8th Amendment does not prohibit the city of Grants Pass from enforcing criminal punishments against people who are homeless for camping outside in the city. Maybe if you would do something to help them find shelters, to help improve their lives. If we would do things to help people improve their lives, a lot less crime and the bullshit would fucking happen. But no, you'd rather punish people for being poor. Fuck you. As the court pointed out, there may be other reasons beyond the scope of this case, and what Grants Pass was doing to homeless people was unconstitutional or otherwise illegal. These could include violations of the 4th Amendment, illegal search and seizure, the 14th Amendment, equal protections under the law, as well as compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. But it's a significant case in that the cruel and unusual punishment clause has been a tool used by legal advocates to prevent the criminalization of homelessness in other places. So while the court didn't specifically overrule other anti-criminalization cases, like the Ninth Circuit's ruling in the case of Martin versus Boise, it undermines them. And then we get into another section. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. That's always a good fucking lesson in life. Anyway, now from the ACLU. ACL responds to the Nacho Supreme Grande decision that cities can punish people for being homeless. I'm about at the point where I won't even call it a Supreme Court. It's inferior as fuck. Now, the Supreme Court, the Supreme Nacho Grande, let's get the name right, ruled today that the cruel and unusual punishment clause of the 8th Amendment does not prohibit cities from punishing unhoused people for sleeping in public, even if they have nowhere else to go. The court held that punishing a person for sleeping in public, even if they have no other option, punishes conduct, not status. And so Robinson versus California, which established that it is cruel and unusual to criminalize a person's status, does not apply. The case Grants Pass versus Johnson originated from an Oregon city that passed ordinances barring people from sleeping outside in public using a blanket, pillow, or even a cardboard sheet to lie on. In Grants Pass, Oregon, unhoused people could be saddled with hundreds of dollars in fines and even jail time for sleeping outside, even though the city lacked enough shelter beds. You know, to me, it seems like it's the fault of the goddamn city, not the fucking homeless. Anyway, it is hard to imagine a starker example of excessive punishment than fining and jailing a person for the basic human act of sleeping, said Scott Katovich, staff attorney for the Trone Center for Justice and Equality. As Justice Sotomayor's dissent powerfully acknowledged, sleep is a biological necessity, not a crime. We cannot arrest our way out of homelessness, and we will continue litigating against cities that are emboldened by this decision to treat unhoused people as criminals. The American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, submitted a friend of the court brief arguing that punishing unhoused people for sleeping outside when they lack access to shelter violates the 8th Amendment protection against cruel and unusual punishment. As the brief highlights the original intent and meaning of the 8th Amendment and its application in more than a century of Supreme Court cases, make clear that the government cannot impose punishment that is disproportionate to the crime. And yes, that applies here, because you're punishing poor and homeless for being poor and homeless. This is so goddamn stupid. This Supreme Nacho Grande is so fucking stupid. The brief goes on to argue that in Robinson versus California, which ruled that criminalizing a person's status is cruel and unusual punishment, and was relied upon by the lower courts in Grants Pass, it's consistent with this proportionality principle. Applying the same proportionality principle, the brief stated, punishing unhoused people for sleeping in public when they have no other choice violates the Eighth Amendment. The court's decision reverses a Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals opinion that punishing unhoused people for sleeping in public when they have no access to other shelter violates the Eighth Amendment protection against cruel and unusual punishment. Yeah, so fuck this Supreme Nacho Grande and all the far right jurists on it. Thomas, Alito, Roberts, Kavanaugh, Gorsuch. Fuck them all. Coney Barrett. She's at times shown she's at least somewhat reasonable, but she's still too far fucking right. We're headed down the road of fucking fascism, and that's... nobody gives a goddamn. All they cry is, the far left, the far left, the far left, ah, the far left, the far left. Yet, no one is warning, oh, we're going into fascism. I don't give a damn. Hitler was a good leader. That's more or less where they're fucking going. And they don't give a shit. America's done. We're through. We're through as a nation. You know, the empire was teetering and they've essentially tripped it so it can fall and die. Welcome to the world of right-wing fascism and hate, bigotry, and demonic authoritarianism. We have hit that point. Thank you, right wing, for killing America. But, yeah, this will be the end of this episode. I just wanted to talk about how they think homelessness is a crime. As always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll be putting links and sources in the description box below the video. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.